Hey everyone. Okay, so this will be probably one of the last videos I make regarding security contracting, since I work very specific and limited contracts now. I have completely stopped contracting for the government, the DoD, DHS, State Department, all that stuff. All of that ended with that kind of contracting at the beginning of this year. I still do other contracting when it comes to private clients and executive protection details, other small details here and there, and as an analyst and client consultant and otherwise for my buddy's private investigation firm. That's a big primary now, apart from the instruction that I do and then other physical security consulting type jobs for businesses, really anyone that needs or wants that kind of consulting based on my experience and background. When it comes to security contracting for government contracts and getting your network established in your name in the game, so to speak, with private client contracting, especially when it comes to overseas work and high-risk contracting and things like that. High-risk contracting being in somewhat non-permissive or non-permissive environments, conflict zones, war zones, combat zones, high crime, dangerous areas like cartel land, Mexico, other places like that. There's a process of building rapport, getting your network, establishing contacts, and the foundational aspects of getting into that game. When it comes to the requirements for federal security contracting on the defense scale, for worldwide protective services contracts, other types of contracts like that, and then CONUS or domestic contracts regarding the Federal Protective Service and other domestic contracts like for the Department of Energy and other things, there are, with contracting companies, there is a criteria that you need to meet. It's all pretty cut and dry, plainly visible on job listings through these companies' websites and other job listing sites like Silent Professionals and jobs like hubs like that, platforms like that. You need to read that criteria very, very carefully and understand whether you fit their criteria and can apply for those positions or not. I have a fairly extensive background with that kind of stuff, between military background and the myriad of different security details and types of work that I've done. All of that comes either subsequently after or before, when applying for positions, your experience, your background. So you need VOEs, verification of employment letters, apart from any other official documentation like tax returns and things like that that verify your employment, other letters of recommendation, and then official military service records and things like that. That is what companies want. When it comes to a lot of outside extracurricular training, because there are a lot of companies out there where you can get training for certain types of work in various parts of the security industry. Some of that training is good, yes, absolutely. Some of it may be beneficial to you with official certificates and things like that, but a lot of companies, when it comes to defense contracting, federal security contracts overseas and stateside, they want work background. So they want military experience. A lot of the time for overseas, you need to have at least one combat deployment or an expeditionary services deployment, things like that. Certain amount of time in the military. Usually it's a minimum of 2 years, being a baseline contract for any enlistment and things like that. It can be much more though. Experience is a big seller and one of the main factors for your ability to be competitive in the sector. There are a lot of applicants. There's a lot of people. Some SWAT background can be applicable for overseas. When it comes to Federal Protective Service contracts, the requirements are not nearly as high. Obviously, they still want you to have a military or law enforcement background in large. We did have a couple of firefighters in the mix on this last contract I was in, prior firefighters and EMTs. That's fairly far and few in between, though, even for the FPS contract. On the contracting side, you have to have a military or law enforcement background and education. Your experience will play a huge factor in being able to get those jobs, and even working in the private client realm of private security. I worked very hard to get my network established, and in having my credentials. You need to have all your ducks in a row, your I Love Me book, all your credentials and everything in order, so that when you go to apply and you go to build your network and start getting jobs, getting contracts, that you're good to go and squared away. Okay, the process after that, that's really the hardest part. The process after that is fairly streamlined, especially with major security contracting companies. Just trying to think of what else. That's a big part of it, though. When it came to executive protection work that I did, especially in Central and South America for private clients, that's much more. It's even much more discretionary than federal contracting. You know, with a lot of those jobs, you're signing NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, a lot of confidentiality agreements, and things like that. How that works in large is a lot of the time that's networking. You meet people, you get your name out there, word of mouth. There are some companies that do that kind of thing. A lot of the rest of the time is you're getting in touch with people, building those networks and relationships, and then you're working with various holdings groups for the companies and the business executives and everything. Various holdings groups and insurance groups that specialize in risk assessment, kidnapping and ransom insurance and things like that. And you're working under them basically through a contract, a per diem contract most of the time, to provide services for however many trips or just by the day for those activities and those details. That's kind of how it works on that end in one way. Again, there are companies that do that kind of thing to establish security companies, and you can go through them too and apply through them. There's a slew of them out there. And if you go do training with like ESI or CRI or some of these companies, they have a lot of connections with some of those organizations as well, apart from federal security contracting. They can help you get a job at times, but there's no guarantee there. And again, that training only goes so far. The major companies want work experience. They want a background. So you have to be able to provide that. Simple as that. It's tough. It can be frustrating, but you just got to work up to it. Get some experience in, get some time in, doing other contracts, spending some time in the military, or in a specialized law enforcement unit, or being a federal agent, things like that. Not that I would recommend that right now, and that's one of the reasons why I left federal contracting, because I just can't agree with the stuff that various entities are doing to the people. So strictly private client now, apart from instructing and everything else. So that's a big part of that. You know, have some principles with it and things like that. Have some principles, but also, you know, don't give up just because you lose out on one contract because for whatever reason they're picky or whatever it is. It happens to everyone. And then when you're in with a company, there can be a lot of BS that comes along with that too, okay? There can be a lot of company bureaucracy and a lot of other stuff that happens with that you either need to play the game with, or if you don't agree with it, you're going to need to cut sling load and go somewhere else. You'll have to move somewhere else. It's not the end of the world. So there's a lot of turnover in this industry. There's a lot of turnover. You will move inevitably from company to company, client to client, things like that. Just make sure when you do depart a company, it is amicably, so that you're not really stonewalled or blacklisted, so to speak, from getting with another company or being able to move to another client without recommendations and things like that, okay? All of that's important. So a lot of things to consider there. You know, I've talked about kit and gear and nuances with all that stuff before and everything, and there's some people that like to argue. Fuck them. I know what I'm about. I have my verifications and certifications and everything, so they can pound sand. If anyone has any questions regarding some of these nuances and just how to expand your ability within the industry and in that game and everything, go ahead and leave a comment. More than happy to talk to people about it. There's really no secrets with this stuff, unless you're doing some secret squirrel stuff for an OGA or through GRS or something. There's really no secrets about it. You can glean this information from ASIS or a slew of security contracting companies and the training organizations and things like that. So, but more than happy to talk about it, and I know other people are happy to talk about it too. My buddy Asymmetrical Athlete, former contractor, former LEO, he talks about that stuff. You've got Vets to PSC. He shows you how to apply to various security companies. He hasn't been on in a while, but he's a good dude. Contractor Ken with Overseas Contractor Academy. He's doing that too. There are people out there in the YouTube sphere and social media sphere that talk about this kind of stuff. So I'm happy to talk about it as well. As far as making videos about this kind of thing, probably the last big one that I'll do about this kind of stuff. But again, you have questions, you want to talk about it, leave a comment, and we can talk about it, or I can point you in the right direction, whatever it is. So just wanted to give some more insight into that, into actually what it takes to get into the structured security companies and federal contracts, and then the private client sector sphere within the industry. There's a lot of ways to do it, but that's the way that I found to do it. Yeah, if you have any questions, let's talk about it. So in a constructive way. If you want to talk a lot of BS and try and cause problems and things like that, no, you're not welcome there. So, but be cool about it and be constructive, and we'll get this no BS assessment and discussion going. So we'll talk about it. Metal up. Out.